So we are now recording today's session. And today we're going to be talking about, as an introduction to teaching academic subjects, and what are academic subjects, and then also teach using English as a medium of instruction. So I'm going to go to just very quickly have a look at the Canvas platform. And this is under the modules. This is down near the bottom of the modules section, near the end of the modules, teaching business English. So teaching business English is an example of teaching an academic subject. So what is an academic discipline or field or area of study? In higher education, most students will choose a discipline to pursue in their studies. These disciplines arise out of centuries of history and ways of education, but in fact, there's no formal way of defining what a discipline is or is not. Some disciplines are commonly known and are found in nearly every university. For instance, most colleges or universities will allow pursuit of the study of mathematics, biology, economics, or history. And there are many dozens of disciplines that have been identified. And they've got a link that takes you to Wikipedia to see a list of different disciplines. And then within each discipline are subdisciplines. For example, within history, a student might focus on only Russian history, or within biology, they might focus on plant biology. Why does this matter to this course? Different disciplines or groups of different disciplines have different expectations about writing within their field. These differences extend to ways of using research, to the acceptable syntax of a sentence. The science, for example, often favor passive sentences rather than active ones in order to keep the focus of the written material on processes or substances, not on the person performing the work. So that's on the Canvas platform. We'll come back to it again in a short while, but I'm going to take us to a PowerPoint presentation right now, and we're going to look at teaching academic English. Now, notice this is not teaching English, this is teaching academic English, because academic English, EAP, how to teach English for academic purposes, this can apply to many different subjects. So this is not just about teaching English, this is about teaching all the other courses that are not English, but you're using English to teach the course. So you might be teaching history or sociology or geography or mathematics or science. But you're using English to actually teach these other academic courses. 5 tips to successfully teach English for academic purposes. Number 1, use authentic materials. Articles from newspapers or magazines rather than English as second language sites. Excuse me. Read short stories written for native speakers. Listen to songs sung in English, and other ideas that might come to you in your teaching process. Number 2, use authentic classroom materials. Choose materials such as textbooks that are not designed for ESL classes. The reason for that is that when the students are attending college later on, they will not get specially designed textbooks for ESL. They will be required to use the mainstream English language textbooks that all the students are using. So they need to have experience and get used to that. Use real college lectures. YouTube has many actual recorded lectures from various universities and various educational institutions and presentations. There are all kinds of recorded lectures. Excuse me, on many different subjects. You can access free lectures from universities like Yale and Harvard. Prepare your students for the experience of listening to lectures and taking notes. They need to have that experience of listening to a lecture while they're writing down point form notes that they get from the lecture. Assignments similar to college. Experiences they will have in English colleges and universities in a new country, in a new culture with new courses. So if a student is moving to an English speaking country to study, they're going to have a lot of new things in their lives. And if you can give them assignments before they leave their home country, if you can give them assignments that are similar to what they're going to find when they get to college, it'll just help them to be prepared for the experience. Preparation and clarity bring confidence. Let students direct their own learning. Give students the freedom to decide what topics to cover in class, what type of assignments they will do, how they will study to accomplish these assignments. Now, you have to be careful with some of these points because you can't just walk into a class at the beginning of a semester and say to the class, all right, I'd like the class to give me the topics that we're going to study this year. You can't do that because you have a curriculum that you're required to follow by your institution. But what you can do is you can say, our curriculum has these different topics on it that we must cover this semester. And which one do you think you would like to do first? Now, sometimes there is an order of topics, a chronology to the topics that makes sense that you need to follow. And so you have to decide at what point do you give the students the freedom to make the selections and establish the process within the framework, within the parameters of how the course is designed, how it's set up. But giving the students some freedom, just as we give you freedom with your essay topics, we give you a list of essays that you can choose from. And we also say to you, if you have another essay topic that you think you would like to write about that is related to this area, then ask permission. And, you know, typically you'll be granted permission to write something that's a bit different. And it's a unique experience then, therefore, for the students. Also, with your conversation activities, your 4 skills lesson plans, it's up to you to decide what the topics are that you're creating the lessons around. So you have a lot of freedom for creativity within the parameters of the structure of the lesson and the course. By giving students choices in what and how they learn, you will be meeting their needs in greater depth. You know, if you have the choice to select a topic that you design a lesson plan around, or you have the choice to select a topic to write an essay about that is of specific interest to you, then you will learn more from it. If it's of interest to you, you're going to go into greater depth with it. All the material that I put together in this PowerPoint came from this blog, and I'll stop the screen sharing here, and I'll put that link in the chat box so that you can actually copy that link, and you can go to that link and do some more reading if you want.
Daniel, you were
Yes.
right now mentioning about the essay. Are you trying to relate that to the final research paper? Sorry, I didn't ask correct. Um, you were saying that we could choose a topic to do an essay. Was that
Yes.
just an example, or do we have an essay coming up?
Well, you've had a couple of essays already. You've had the foundation essay, and you've had the MOOC essay, and within both of those, you have a lot of choices that you can make.
Okay.
But with the research paper, the final research paper, you're given, I believe it's 4 different topics that you can choose from to write about.
So again, we have the freedom.
Exactly. You have the freedom to choose a topic that relates to what you want to write about. Or maybe you have another idea that is at the same level of these research paper topics, and you'd like to write about something else, where you can send Simon Baker an email, explain the concept of your topic that you'd like to write about, and get permission ahead of time to write it.
Okay.
I know students who have asked permission to write a different topic than the ones listed on Canvas, and as far as I know, everybody was always given permission to write a different topic. So
Good.
so I did put in the chat box the link to that blog that was in that PowerPoint that we just looked at. So now we're going to go to another PowerPoint. And here we're going to look at the concept teaching business English. So you see, with teaching business English, we're not talking about teaching English. We're talking about teaching a specific type of English, business English, that relates to charts and graphs and reports and analysis of data and that sort of thing. Excuse me. How is teaching business English different from teaching general English? Sorry, I've been fighting this cough for a few weeks and it just won't go away.
It is so good. So probably teaching business English goes through a specific area. Like if you want to learn about graphic design, then you have to know the concepts and the terms and everything related to that specific area.
Correct. So teaching general English is where you're teaching English and you're reading short stories and you're using English to write essays. But teaching business English, you might be working with a group of business owners who need to write reports, and they need to do tax forms, and they need to do different things related to business specifically. And there's a specific set of language and terms that goes with business English, just as there is with any specialized topic. If you're talking about trigonometry, there is there's a set of vocabulary words that relate specifically to trigonometry. If you're talking about pharmaceuticals and medications and prescriptions, there are very specific words that fit that topic area, that subject area. Now, as the teacher, you're not required to know everything there is to know about every topic, but if you are doing a class with teaching business English and you are doing a class with business owners, then you should have some basic ideas about terminology related to business English. So this lady, Gabrielle Jones, who won the British Council Teaching English Blog Award, tells how to succeed in the business English classroom. Find out what students really want to achieve and what is the best way to find that out. What's the best way to find out what do students want to achieve?
Asking them.
Ask them.
Ask them. That's right. Exactly. Yes. You'll be teaching busy adults who are used to working towards objectives. You should therefore discuss with them at the beginning of the course what they would realistically like to achieve. And some of them might want to focus on skills, telephoning more effectively, writing more coherent emails, chairing meetings, organizing and running meetings with peers, etc. Get a clear idea about the contexts in which learners use English. A very important part of the needs analysis process should be a discussion about the context in which the course participants need to perform. Why are they learning English? Why do they communicate within their work and under what conditions? Someone who is learning English just to brush up fluency skills will have different needs and expectations to someone who is learning English to supervise a team working in another country. So you need to identify what are the specific needs of each of the students, and you could probably put them into groups within a classroom. This group of 3 or 4 students might have similar needs, and another group of 3 or 4 might have different similar needs. And you can therefore coordinate your teaching efforts around what they all need to encounter. Be businesslike, but keep energy levels high. To make the right impression, it's important to teach in a businesslike way. This affects what you say and how you behave, but also what you wear. If you're going to work in company, actually in the business itself, then punctuality, professionalism, and competence are crucial. And that's true. I agree with that statement, but I think that's just as important in an online teaching situation as well. So I would say it's not just in the company, in the office where you might go teaching, but also here online. I mean, if I don't show up and look businesslike, then you're not going to take me as seriously. If I wear my baseball cap all the time during the lectures, it's not as businesslike in appearance. So so I take the baseball cap off before I start the recording.
Yeah.
So,
I like it.
well, thank you. I like them too, but the acceptance of you see, there are social norms and socially accepted realities that not everybody would accept me wearing a baseball cap during the lecture, right? Now, in the past, when I was teaching art at the university, I wore different hats. I have a variety of hats, some baseball caps, and some are straw fedoras that I would wear during the warmer weather. And I would wear those to class, and the students got a kick out of them. But when I went online with the teaching those university art classes, I often did wear a baseball cap. The students thought that was great. They really liked the baseball cap. That it brought a kind of informal feeling to the classes, to the sessions. It made the students feel more comfortable. So that was a good thing. And this was the first time that we had all been doing the online classes in the beginning part of the pandemic. And so there was a lot of tension. There were a lot of the students who were very concerned and upset about this online teaching, and they were complaining about too much screen time, and they were not comfortable with it. And so I did as many things as I could to make them feel more comfortable. You know, I would make little videos of myself talking, and I would play the videos for them. And so you do whatever you need to do to make it a comfortable situation for the students. And I think we just had Zara just joined us. Hello, Zara. So that's good. We've got a few people here with us today. That's good. Excellent. So you do what you need to do to make it a good learning experience for the students. Make it interesting. You know, we don't sit here and tell jokes constantly for the hour and a half that we're here, but we have a little chuckle every now and then, and that's fine. That breaks the monotony of the seriousness of a lecture. And if you have a little bit of laughter every now and then, it helps to hold people's attention. So that's good too. And there's nothing wrong with a little bit of laughter, in my opinion. I think it's good for us. The next point, furthermore, business English learners, like all learners, need motivating. A group of managers who have just come back from a long business trip will need their trainer to keep their energy levels high, and as with all classes, there needs to be a certain degree of entertainment. There you go. There's that point I made just a moment ago. So the point above, furthermore, business English learners, like all learners, need motivating. Well, how do I motivate you? What are the things that I do to motivate you? Can anybody name some of the things that I do to motivate you?
Coming early to class, having some chit chat before the class. I really love that one.
That's exactly right. And that's why I do it, Ada. I arrive early in the class. I always make sure I'm early online, so that when I don't want any of you arriving online in the class and nobody's here yet, because you know you might think to yourself, oh, is my link not working, or is there a class today, or what's going on? So if I'm there when you arrive, then you immediately know that there's a class and we can start having a chat, and that's good motivator for the students.
And also you explain, every assessment, everything, very with details, and our upcoming, essays or assignment or everything. So I have a good, idea about things in future. And I think it's great that you do it every session for us.
That's right. And I do that on purpose so that you have that overview.
Yeah.
If you have that overview, then when you arrive at the next sessions, you're going to be able to take them in more thoroughly. You're going to be able to focus on them, and it just helps a lot to have that communication. Now, Dr. Valley sent me a few weeks ago now, but he sent me this page that shows all the teaching topics that I do and that Anna Patricia will do and Elham does. Did you receive this page as well?
No. No.
I did it, but because I asked for it. At the beginning, they didn't tell me or send anything. And approximately around 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or so, Simon shared that document with me.
Okay, but you asked for it.
Yes. Oh, I didn't know that that existed.
Okay, sure, fair enough. Well, if you would like to receive this document, I'm happy to email it to you as well for the others of you.
Thank
And
you.
Yeah.
you can send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat box again. I'm happy to share it with you because I think if you know what is coming, that helps you a lot. So there's my email address. If you would like to receive that document from me, just send me an email and ask for it,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll email it back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
I'm sorry, Daniel. What should we ask for? What document in the topic of our email?
Just ask for the class lesson schedule,
Okay.
and I'll know what you're talking about. It doesn't actually have that title, but I will know what you're talking about. Okay?
Okay.
Because when I share with you what's coming up in future sessions, I'm just reading from that page. So it's not, there's no magic involved. I'm just using that page as reference. The fourth point to keep in mind is choose your materials wisely. As in the general English classroom, learners will expect you to bring materials to class. There are lots of books and online resources available. In fact, there's so much available out there, sometimes it's difficult to choose which item you want to use, but there certainly is a wealth of material available online. It's important to choose materials that create authentic situations in the classroom. Probably the most important resource is the learners themselves. So when you share experiences or you give a response to a question, that brings an authentic perspective into the conversation, because it's not just my perspective when it's coming from one of you as the students. It brings it into a level of authenticity that is different, and other students can relate to it more easily than if I just keep talking. I mean, I have no problem talking. I love to hear myself, so I can certainly keep talking, but that's not the best way for you to learn the material. You're going to learn things more thoroughly if you hear from other students as well, because the students can provide real materials from their working lives, the things they need to read and understand, or perhaps even create and present. These could be leaflets, emails, PowerPoint presentations, or reports. Be flexible and try to anticipate problems. Business people can have high expectations. They might ask for classes before they start work, during lunchtime, or at the end of the working day. This means trainers can end up working long days, perhaps starting the first class at 7:30 in the morning and finishing the last lesson in the evening. In addition, learners may cancel at the last minute because of unforeseen problems. Perhaps an important call has come in or their train is delayed. Although this can be frustrating, business English teachers and trainers need to accept that for learners in the workplace, work is clearly their number one priority. To reduce the stress, it can be a good idea to negotiate a cancellation policy with the company in advance. Ask them to make sure they inform you 24 or 48 hours in advance, for example. Now, this point is referring to if you are going into a company to give English lessons to a group of people at the company, perhaps in the boardroom or something of that nature. You know, the way we're set up with our webinars, I do not require you to tell me 24 or 48 hours ahead of time if you're not going to be able to make it to the class. That's not necessary because I'm going to run the webinar and record it, whether there are 2 of you or 4 of you or 5 of you, whatever the case might be. So it's a little bit different in an online situation than it is in a classroom situation. Any questions about that? Does that make sense? For those of you who are teaching, if you know you're not going to be able to teach on a certain day because of a doctor's appointment, or maybe you're sick and you're not able to go in to teach, then there's a policy with your teaching education institution that you need to let the principal or the business manager know at a certain point ahead of time. You know, they like to know the day ahead if possible. And if it's a registered appointment, then you can give even more notice, advance notice. But if you're sick, sometimes you can only let them know the night before. But every school has a policy when it comes to that. How do you find the policies where you're working? So there's a policy related to taking time off for medical appointments or for being sick. You get a certain number of sick days, or how does that work out?
In the beginning, when we are, we are starting, we start working in a company, and we do, we read everything, all policies. Also, we need to read that part and also sign that. Be careful about that.
Yes.
I work for a college and we have something that is called collective agreement, where you find all the information there and it is provided as soon as they hire you by human HR.
Yes. Yes. And in that collective agreement, and every business has a collective agreement for its employees, and that is where you typically find that information. Do you think the policies are fair at the places where you're working, or are you treated well with
We
the
are
policies?
very spoiled. Yes.
Good for you.
That's
Yes.
good. That's good. That's not always the case, but it's nice to hear that some employers are treating the employees very well. That's good. Okay, so next point on the page there, a further issue may be the numbers of people attending class. It's not unusual to prepare for a group of 6 to 8 people and have only one person show up. I've had that happen on webinars where I was prepared for 8 or 10 or 12 people and only 1 or 2 people showed up. I still present the webinar. There's not as much conversation, obviously, with fewer attendees, but I still present it, I still record it, and my material is still available on the recorded webinar page on the website for people to come and listen to it on their own time. And that's where the very last point comes into play. Try and create activities that will work on a one-to-one basis. Business English teaching can be very interesting and rewarding, although teaching in-company employees requires a variety of skills and techniques. It mostly boils down to good preparation and a professional approach. And again, I agree with that statement, but I say it also applies to online teaching, not just teaching in company or in a classroom situation. So I just have to stop sharing the screen there so I can set up the next PowerPoint. Parts of my screen get covered.
On the canvas, or you just made it?
These PowerPoint presentations?
Yeah.
I created them myself. They are not on Canvas.
Oh, okay.
So now we're going to look specifically at, continuing with the idea of teaching business English, we're going to look specifically at finance and accounting. So with finance and accounting, in this PowerPoint, we look at a little bit of stock market history, global stock market indices. What does AAA rating mean? And we look at when Canada had their AAA rating reduced in June of 2020 during the beginning part of the pandemic. And we talk about the three primary asset classes. So over 400 years ago, the very first corporation was created, the Dutch East India Company. This was created in the Netherlands, in Holland, by the Dutch government. And they went to rival trading companies in the country, and they said to these business owners, instead of fighting and competing with each other for business trade, we want you to join together. And so the business owners would put in a certain amount of money. Let's say one business owner put in 100 guilders and another business owner put in 200 guilders. And when an expedition would go out and return with goods and products from faraway lands, the person who put in 200 guilders up front would get twice as much profit than the person who put in 100 guilders. The guilder just being the Dutch currency. So depending on this was the very beginning of what we know as stock market and chartered corporation stock market ownership. So the stock markets in all the countries around the globe, the stock markets that have the stocks of different companies listed, as individuals, we can go and buy a few stocks of this company and a few stocks of another company. And depending on how much money we put into the purchase of those stocks, we own a little tiny bit of that company because the stocks represent ownership in the company. It's equity in the company. And when we own a little bit of the stocks of a company, it might be company ABC that manufactures wooden chairs or whatever it is. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever the product is, if we own stocks in the company, then if the company makes profit, we actually get to share in those profits. And we might be given dividends as an income stream, or the value of our stocks might just increase in value. So common stocks, which are the most common type of stock, they're called a common stock. But common stocks, when you buy a common stock, you typically do not get a dividend income stream from them. You buy the common stock for X amount of money, and over time, as the company prospers and grows, the value of that stock increases. So you might buy the stock originally for $1, and then over a period of 20 years, it might grow in value to $20. But you don't get the benefit of that growth in the value until you sell the stock. So back in 1602 in the Netherlands, this was the first corporation, the first chartered corporation on the globe that was created on March 20th of 1602. They were chartered to trade with Mughal India during the period of proto-industrialization, from which 50% of textiles and 80% of silks were imported, chiefly from its most developed region known as Bengal Suba. So these slides are just screenshots of pages from the internet. That corporation, the Dutch East Indies Corporation, was like Amazon is today in both scope of products and shipping globally as they understood it at the time. So they had a vast array of products, shipbuilding and both production and trade of East Indian spices, Indonesian coffee, Formosan sugarcane, South African wine. The company was a transcontinental employer and a corporate pioneer of outward foreign direct investment at the dawn of modern capitalism. In the early 1600s, by widely issuing bonds and shares of stock to the general company, the VOC became the world's first formally listed public company, public traded company. That was the beginning of what we know as stock markets today. The S&P, or the TSX Composite Index, is Canada's main corporate index. It's Canada's largest stock exchange, the Toronto Stock Market. It's the equivalent of the S&P 500 market index in the United States. But the TSX is comprised of Canada's largest and most prominent companies, often used as a barometer for the health of the Canadian economy. Now, when people talk about the stock market, typically people are referring to the US stock market because it has been for many, many decades the largest stock market on the face of the earth. It is still one of the very largest stock markets, and the US is one of the largest economies. But there is another country that also has a very large economy, a powerful economy, and many stock markets that are actually rivaling the US stock market. Do you know what country that might be?
China?
Yes, that's exactly right, Ada. China. The Chinese economy is now as big as the US economy. In fact, they kind of take turns being the biggest, depending on what day it is. And the stock markets in China, there are many of them. Stock markets are in direct competition with the US stock market. Canada's economy and Canada's stock market represents less than 2% of economic growth on the face of the earth. So this PowerPoint presentation, this one is not on Canvas either. I created this myself, but this is focusing on business English. And you notice the terminology I'm using, the words I'm using are business related words. So of course, in a lesson plan, I would put together a vocabulary list of these business terms. I would distribute it to the students and we would discuss the definitions of each of these business terms and make sure that they understood them fully in the process of this lesson plan. Did you have a question, Ada?
Yes, please. See, if you are going to teach, business for business students, I mean, a subject like economy. So you're supposed to know a little bit about that. It's not just easy to find them, some words or some terminology. And that's not it. I think you need a little bit, you need to know more to teach to other people about a subject. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I have the advantage of I have been working for the past 30 years in the financial industry.
Okay, that's it.
As a financial advisor, and I studied business and commerce at university as well. So I've taught many different subjects over the past few decades, and you know, I've been teaching for over 50 years. I started teaching piano and theory, music theory, when I was 11.
11, you started teaching,
I started teaching private piano and theory lessons when I was 11 years old.
and you got paid?
Yes, my whole family was involved with teaching.
Oh,
Yes, I did get paid. It was great.
nice.
And then I did my high school and I went to university where I studied art and French and English and then ultimately and I studied business and commerce and business administration. I studied all these things at university because I was curious about them all. And so then I went to teaching, went and taught in high school, the high school system for a number of years. And I taught visual arts, I taught English, I taught French, I taught mathematics, and I taught economics and financial advising at a community college in the city where I was living at the time.
So many different subjects. I cannot believe that. Art, math, English, business. How?
And because I was fascinated by all of them.
Nice.
And in art, in the visual arts, and in music as well, there's a tremendous amount of mathematics that can be involved. And so I incorporate mathematics into the artwork. I incorporate mathematics into the music, and I've created lesson plans that involve mathematics in music and in art. And it's a lesson plan that involves all three of those subject areas. It's a cross-curriculum design. And so it makes it very interesting for the students as well.
It's not possible for us teachers.
No, not everybody, but you know, I mean, I'm sure you have skills and talents in many things that I don't know anything about that you could include in your teaching. You could bring them into your teaching. And you need to think about those things too, you know, think about the things that you've done, the things that you've done in your life, the experiences that you've had that you can incorporate into your teaching because students enjoy hearing about those personal endeavors, those personal accomplishments. And so it makes a difference. But you're right, in any subject that a teacher is teaching, it is necessary to know more than just a few basic words. It is necessary to know a little bit about a particular topic. Yes, it's true enough.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Actually, I'm struggling with the TBC, the business teaching this morning. And is this about the high level students, and they have a lot of experience about business, and we as a teachers, so very don't have any confidence to teach the high level skill business, the kind of English or Japanese. Yeah, and so how can we improve our confidence? So recover our confidence.
That's a very good question, Eileen. And my response to that is that that's not something that you even need to worry about because this particular PowerPoint that I'm showing to you is designed for high intermediate or advanced level students, yes. So they would be very knowledgeable in business in their own language, their mother tongue, but they're not going to know the terminology in English that we've been going through. So they're not going to know what a capitalization weighted index means. They might know what it means in their own language, but they wouldn't know what it means in English.
Yeah.
So we're just teaching them the English terminology that fits the concepts that they're going to be familiar with in their own language. And then this goes to the point that Ada made a few moments ago, that it is a good idea for you to have more than just a basic knowledge of the words. It's a good idea for you to have some understanding of what this means. So a capitalization weighted index, that's referring to what we call small cap, mid cap, and large cap corporations. So small capitalization corporations are corporations that are worth less than $500 million. A mid cap corporation is a corporation that's worth between 500 million and $5 billion. And a large cap corporation is a corporation that's worth over $5 billion. So Amazon, for instance, is worth more than $5 billion. So that's a large cap corporation. Microsoft, large cap corporation. You know, the big banks in just about every country are large cap corporations because the big banks are worth a lot of money. So, but it's easy enough, Eileen, you shouldn't let yourself get too concerned about these things, because it's easy enough to look up definitions on the internet. Even you could type in capitalization weighted index, type that into the internet, into your search bar, and it's going to give you an explanation of what that means. So as I say quite often, being a good teacher does not mean that you know all the information. But being a good teacher means that you know where to go to find answers. If you know where to go to find answers to your questions and to questions that students ask, then you're off to a great start. I guarantee that at some point in time during one of these webinars, one of you is going to ask me a question and I won't know the answer to it. But I'll tell you, I don't know the answer. However, I will spend some time looking for the answer, and I'll let you know at the next session, or I'll tell you in the WhatsApp chat, you know. So it's all about knowing where to go to find the information and find the answers to the questions. And that will build your confidence. Does that help, Eileen?
Yeah. Thank you.
See, just like I said to Ada a few minutes ago, Eileen, there are going to be many things in your life that you're good at that I don't know how to do. And you should look to those things that you have, use yourself as a resource, and bring into your classroom the things that you're good at doing. And use your own experiences as a
Stopped. Something have trouble.
Yeah, I think internet
the
problem.
largest.
Okay.
This is the largest stock market exchange in the US, the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So when people talk about the stock market is up or the stock market is down, they're usually referring to this United States Stock Exchange, because that's the stock market that has been the main point of reference for stock market conversations for many decades, since the Second World War. And so the stock market, it's called a blue chip stock market. Blue chip companies are the big companies such as the big banks and Microsoft. Those are blue chip companies. They're well established. They're worth a lot of money, and they usually don't drop in value. So those are blue chip companies. And these big major stock exchanges are comprised mostly of publicly owned blue chip companies. The FTSE is in London, the Financial Times Stock Exchange. Is in London, and it measures the, excuse me just for a second. This FTSE index is in the London Stock Exchange, London, England. And it's the London stock market with the highest market capitalization. It is seen as a gauge of prosperity for businesses regulated by UK company law. And then in Germany, the stock market name is the DAX. And the DAX, again, is big blue chip companies. And it's one of the main European stock markets as well. Every country has their own stock markets. In Hong Kong, it's the Hang Seng Index. Again, it's a benchmark stock exchange for blue chip stocks. The index is composed of 4 subsector indices in industry, finance, utilities, and real estate investment trusts. The index uses a free float market capitalization weighting scheme with a 10% cap on any one component's index weight. So it's a bit more of a free, it's a freer stock market in the sense that the individual weighting of each of these subsectors can vary significantly compared to the other subsectors. So it's set up a little bit differently than the stock markets that we know about. Then there's the Shanghai Stock Exchange. This is in China. It's the largest stock exchange in mainland China. It is a nonprofit organization run by the China Securities Regulatory Commission, including stocks, mutual funds, bonds, and derivatives that are all traded on the exchange. You can look up any one of these on the internet. That's all I did was I just went to Investopedia and I looked up each of them, took a screenshot of it on my phone and emailed the picture to my laptop and then just put it into the PowerPoint. Did a cut and paste thing. So, I mean, anybody can do it and anybody can find this information. The Nikkei is the Tokyo, Japan Stock Exchange. Now, the Tokyo, Japan Stock Exchange is not as big now as it was 25 years ago. Does anybody know what happened that caused the Nikkei Japanese Stock Exchange to plummet in value?
Arlene, it's your field. You're kind of Japanese. I'm not into economics, so sorry.
That's okay. But just think about it. So 25 years ago, 25 or 30 years ago, the US stock market was the largest stock market and the biggest economy on the face of the earth. And the US economy represented about 67 to 70% of economic growth worldwide. Yes, Zara. I'm sorry, you're muted, Zara.
I have joined the class this a little late, and I don't understand what this issue is about, or how is it connected to teaching or TESOL. I don't understand at all what it means, and how I can connect this kind of subject to what we are working on. Can you explain that for me?
This is just an example of teaching business English.
Oh, business English. Okay, I didn't understand. Sorry about that. So
specifically teaching business English. And if we think back to 25 or 30 years ago, the United States economy represented 67 to 70% of economic growth on the face of the earth. The Japanese economy represented about 25%. Between those two economies, that was 95% of economic growth on the face of the earth.
Oh, okay. Can we say that for teaching business language or business English business? Business. We need some terminology related. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Can we say that in order to teach business English business, we need some terminology related to business major, and we can talk about those kind of words or vocabularies related to business to the students. One of which might be, a stock market or something that you're talking about.
That's correct. And depending on what type of business student you have,
exactly.
that's going to affect the kind of terminology that you're using in the class. But I want you to think back to
business correspondence.
Okay.
I used to teach business correspondence to my students a few years ago. And I was just teaching some terminology and some of the phrases, expressions, or the words that they needed to know while, for example, having correspondence with their business, for example, partner. So stock market can be one of the examples that we can work on.
Right.
So thank you so much for clarifying, because I wasn't on the right track, so I didn't understand exactly what was going on. Thank you so much for clarifying it.
That's fine. You're welcome. So I'd like all of you to think back to about 25 years ago. Something happened in Japan about 25 years ago that had a very devastating impact on their economy.
Harbor?
25? Really? 25 years ago?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I understood 45 years ago.
Pearl Harbor was about 45, 50 years ago, right? But about 25 years ago in Japan, they had a big tsunami.
Oh, yes, right.
And the tsunami hit the nuclear plant. I can't remember the name of the city, but it hit the nuclear plant, and it caused meltdown of the nuclear facilities. And that event, that tsunami had an extremely detrimental impact on the Japanese economy and almost wiped it out. Not totally, because the Japanese people are very resilient, but it really had a negative impact on their economy, and it caused their stock market to drop tremendously in value, and they have not recovered yet from that. After a quarter of a century, they still have not recovered back to where they were before. So we talk about economic things and economic factors, and we can talk with economy and terminologies related to economies, but then there are factors beyond our control, natural disaster factors that have tremendous detrimental impact. So let's talk about something a lot more recent that has had a global impact on economies, the pandemic. I mean, we've all been living through the pandemic, and it has affected the economies of all the countries that we live in. And we know many people who have been so affected badly by the pandemic that it has almost destroyed them financially. In fact, some people have lost their houses and they've lost their jobs because of the pandemic. So it's been a huge, huge impact, and it just goes that way. That we can do all the planning we want to do, but these natural disasters come along and slam against the human race, and they affect everything, politically and economically. They affect the health tremendously, affect the health of nations, people, and this all comes into the conversation about economics. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit and those points a little bit to illustrate especially to Eileen, that when we talk about economies and business English, we can talk about many other factors in life, such as the pandemic or the tsunami in Japan 25 years ago. All of these factors have a definite impact. And so this is all knowledge that is not economic specifically, but it affects economies. So we can bring this conversation into the economic discussion, and it has an impact that students relate to and people relate to. As soon as I mention the pandemic, all of a sudden, all of you now relate to the conversation. And I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about when I say that the pandemic had a negative financial impact on many economies around the world, people and countries, and it hasn't gone away yet. The pandemic has not disappeared yet. Okay? So, just some points of consideration. And then we move into the conversation about what is a AAA rating. These are called bond ratings by Standard & Poor's and Fitch and Moody's. These are different companies that rank the ability of governments and corporations to repay the debt on bonds that they issue. So governments and corporations will issue bonds to raise money to build plants or do research, or a government might issue a bond to raise money for building roads and bridges. And when they sell a bond to an individual, the person is renting their money to the government. So I might say, I want to buy a bond for $1,000 from the government of Ontario. So I go and I buy my bond, I pay my $1,000, and the government has my $1,000 now to use for working with to work on projects. And they pay me interest, they pay me rent on that bond. That rent might be paid quarterly, it might be paid annually, but they pay me rent. And that's a form of income that I have from that bond. And so these rating companies, Standard & Poor's and Fitch and Moody's, they rank the ability of governments and corporations to repay these debts on the bonds. So if I buy $1,000 bond from the Ontario government for 10 years, at the end of the 10 years, the government has to be able to give me my $1,000 back because the time frame is up. So if these bond rating agencies think that a government or a corporation is able to repay their debts, then they'll give them a AAA rating. Canada has had a AAA rating for many, many years until June of 2020, June 24th, 2020, when Fitch reduced Canada's AAA rating to AA+. They dropped them a category. What do you think the reason for that was? Now, keep in mind, June of 2020, that's just a couple of months into the beginning of the pandemic. Why do you think that the bond rating agency Fitch, why do you think they would strip Canada of that AAA rating?
Well, we're not interested, I guess.
How do you
Because,
mean?
I mean, it was pandemic and everybody was, involved in that. So no one was, investigating, everyone was concerned about, health issues and everything. I don't know, maybe.
Yes, that's definitely part of it, Ada. Another part of it from the mathematical and the dollar perspective is that Fitch, the bond rating agency, said Canada was spending so much money giving money to Canadians to help them survive in the pandemic that the Fitch bond rating agency became concerned that the Canadian government might not be able to repay their debts in the future down the road. So they said, we're going to reduce Canada's rating to AA+. So they did. I don't know what it is now. I don't know if we've recovered back to our AAA rating, bond rating or not. But that's what happened, and that's why it happened back in June of 2020. And then these articles are just a little bit more about that. And again, I can't play this video because this is not a live link. It's just a screenshot of the page. But one of the key things connected with Canada's rating being dropped was connected to the Alberta oil fields. Because when the pandemic hit, people stopped driving cars. People stopped driving their vehicles. My car sat in my driveway for weeks, didn't go anywhere. So I wasn't putting gas in the car. And most people were not buying gas. And that caused the production of oil and oil products, not only in Alberta, but globally, caused the production of oil products to decline. And in Alberta, the oil in Alberta, some of it is drilled using big drilling rigs, but a lot of the oil in Alberta comes from what is called the tar sands. The Alberta tar sands, the oil is actually in the surface layer of the earth. And so they have to scoop up all this dirt that has the oil in it. And they have to put it through a process that separates the oil out of the dirt. It's a very expensive process. And they actually have to cook the dirt and boil it and steam it. And there's a process called fracking that they sometimes use with tar sands. Now, the fracking is where they pump steam underground and it forces the oil to the surface. But the fracking process is not being used as much anymore because it was causing small earthquakes to occur and other environmental issues to happen. So the whole idea of the Alberta tar sands, if the price of oil drops below $120 a barrel globally, then it is not economically viable to get oil out of the Alberta tar sands. And when the price of oil dropped down to $40 a barrel around the globe during the pandemic, it was just didn't make economic sense to keep drilling and keep pulling oil out of Alberta. So the oil fields basically shut down in Alberta. And they just didn't produce any oil. They've started up now again, but they still have not recovered to where they were pre-pandemic. So there are many different things that affect economic discussions and economic conversations. And you always have to look at natural disasters. You have to look at political events. You have to look at many different things to find out what all is involved with the impact on the economic situation you want to discuss. And now we go into what are asset classes. Well, there's equity, which is stocks, or equity just means ownership. I mean, if you own real estate, then you have an equity investment. But if you own stocks, you have an equity investment. There's fixed income. These are bonds and other marketable securities. And then, of course, there's cash. That's the third asset class. So on the face of the earth, there are equities, there are fixed income, equities, bonds, and cash. Those are basically the three types of asset classes on the face of the earth. Then we would move into a bit more of an accounting discussion, and we would look at what is gross domestic product. We would look at what are balance sheets, corporate and personal balance sheets, and the gross domestic product of any country is the total monetary or market value of all the finished goods and services produced within a country's borders in a specific time period. As a broad measure of overall domestic production, it functions as a comprehensive scorecard of a given country's economic health. So we're just going to end that PowerPoint because I do want to look at English as a medium of instruction just quickly before we go. English as a medium of instruction. Now this is where we're teaching subjects that are not English. So we're not teaching English specifically. We might be teaching history or math or science. But this is all about using English as the medium of instruction. What is the currently preferred methodology for English language instruction to speakers of other languages?
Still CLT.
Yes, CLT, that's right. And what does CLT stand for?
Communicative language.
Teaching.
Yeah.
Technology.
Communicative
language
language
methodology.
teaching.
Method-
Communicative
I'm sorry.
language teaching.
CLT.
Teaching.
That's right. Thank you. English as a medium of instruction, or EMI, refers to the use of the English language to teach academic subjects other than English itself in countries where the first language of the majority of the population is not English. The world is seeing a boom in EMI as an educational model in universities, secondary schools, and even primary schools. The implications of this growing trend remain severely under-researched. Goodness. EMI is increasingly being implemented via top-down policies. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Maybe some water can help.
Yeah.
You're right. I have it here. I start coughing after talking so much. So I think maybe we'll stop this. I'll, excuse me, I'll do that at the beginning of the next lesson.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you.
So I'll do the EMI to start off our next session with.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I'm going to stop the recording now.
Sure.